All right. Thank you very much, Seth. So I'm going to walk you down to some of the features that we covered for Helix Cloud Cost. We're going to try to make it very interactive in terms of the presentation itself, not too many slides. It's going to be a couple slides, and then we'll jump into the demo itself and looking at the actual product. First of all, we had a fantastic last 6 months in terms of the development. There's a lot of changes happening in the cloud space in general. And what we're seeing is, before we jump into the actual features itself, I wanted to kind of quickly cover some major trends that we're seeing in the last 6 months or last 12 months that has influenced some of the features that we're actually building. First and foremost, hybrid clouds are here to stay, right? So most of the customers in the world used to think that we would probably migrate all of AWS, especially thought that everybody would migrate to the cloud. But in reality, that's not the case, right? So majority of our customers have on-prem presence and will probably have on-prem presence forever. And there's also a lot of customers on capacity optimization product that is a very successful product in the market and has tons of data being collected. So that was a major area for us to look into for cloud cost expansion. Second, we are also seeing that people are starting to not have vendor lock-in. So majority of our customers are seeing a big surge in their adoption of Azure technologies, and you'd see that roadmap as well as the features that we have built in the last 6 months have also been influenced by that trend. And thirdly, the service mapping is extremely critical. So no longer the customers are just interested in resources; they are interested in teams. They are interested in applications. They are interested in service mapping of those applications, so that they can actually take actions on the recommendations. At the same time, be able to understand if they power off something, or if one of the VM is actually going out of capacity, how does it affect the rest of the application? So you'd see the roadmap also being influenced by that. Next up is that we're also seeing a lot of customers finally realizing that there is a new way to actually save money in the cloud, which is if you power off a VM, you no longer pay for the VM in the cloud. You used to be very different on the on-prem side, so we're seeing a lot of scheduling of some of these low priority VMs in the cloud itself. And finally, the IT teams are becoming more like service providers. When I say that, I mean there's obviously service providers who are repackaging AWS, Azure, and Google Compute's services and then giving it to their end users. But we're also seeing that the IT teams are becoming more independent, and they're looking at they're negotiating on behalf of multiple application teams or application owners to AWS, Azure, and Google Compute and getting a good company rate, or potentially even charging a little bit of fee for certain types of services within their organization, so that they can have an operating budget or they have a budget of their own. And in order to address some of these trends, what we've done is to actually build a feature that address exactly these trends, right? So first and foremost, the features that we'll be seeing in the demo itself would be the enterprise-wide visibility, which is ability to see cloud, the cost of entire hybrid cloud across your entire infrastructure. In order to do that, we've actually built a connector directly to TSCO or Helix OnPremise, which basically allows you to bring in all your on-prem information or all your on-prem collected data into the cloud environment, which allows you to look at the costing in hybrid environments. And we'll look at the demo itself. But now applications can reside anywhere in the world, as well as on-prem and cloud mixture, and you'd still be able to see the costing, forecasting, and budgeting aspect of it. Second, we have introduced an optimization for Azure. As we're seeing pickup of Azure, we're also investing more in Azure technologies in general, and that was one of the areas that we actually did do right sizing and optimization on Azure, and there'll be more stuff coming in the roadmap as well in that direction. Third, we have added margins for cloud services. Now, every single cloud service for every provider is now available as a catalog. This is especially useful for service providers when they're getting negotiated rates for a specific service and want to provide a discount to their end users, so that they can cut a percentage in the middle, or for internal IT teams who are behaving like CSM for their own app owners. That would allow them to create margins. Finally, we've also second to the finally, really, we've also added a discovery connector. Discovery is the best-in-class tool for BMC Discovery is the best-in-class tool for service mapping. We've added a direct connector, and in fact, we've also added a cross-launch using the same SSO, which allows you to be leveraging the benefits of Helix platform and be able to look at the resources in a service context, as well as be able to visualize it, and we'll see it in part of the demo as well. And finally, we've added power schedules for AWS, right? So not only you can actually, the software basically goes through your data and looks at the usage patterns and recommends you when can you power on and when can you power off these VMs safely using the machine learning algorithms built within the product itself. With that, I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to try to do a little bit of demo with Rick driving the rest of the demo. Rick?
All right, Rick, I'm just passing you the privileges to present, and I believe you should be able to speak as well. Let me make sure you're unmuted. Rick, can you give us a sound check?
Hello?
Yep.
Yep, test.
Yep.
Great. Let me get rid of that. Okay, great. Thanks for passing the ball over. So in the next 20 minutes or so, we'll just do a quick demo of some of these new features that Shyamal highlighted. So first off, let me give you the lay of the land here. So you're looking at our Helix Cloud Cost dashboard, which is the first thing you see when you log in. And the idea of the dashboard is to give you a single view of all of your costs across your public cloud providers. And now, through the hybrid cloud feature that Shyamal mentioned, we can also pull in on-premise data as well. You're seeing that on this tab here. So the way we do that, the way we pull in this data is through a concept of connectors. And let me just show you real quickly a connector and the connectors we have for this environment. So when I click on the connectors, a link in the toolbox, it brings me to my connectors page that I can manage. You can see in this environment, we've got a number of connectors pulling in both security and cost data into this tool. So the connector we're interested in is our new connector for true site capacity optimization, which is here. And it's currently running, but what I want to do is disable it and just give everybody a look at some of the settings here. And so we'll disable the connector for the moment and edit it. And what we do here, when we add this new connector, is we give it a unique name. In this case, we're pointing to a test environment. I'm pulling in infrastructure type billing and usage data. And then I point it, in this case, I pointed at the database that we're interested in to do that. Now, like all the other connectors in the environment, we can run these on a scheduled basis or on demand. Usually for costing purposes, we typically recommend running at least once a day to pull in the cost data. So you can see here that setting up a connector to pull in this sort of data as well as other public cloud data is fairly easy to do. So let me just cancel out of this, and I'll restart our connector. And once the connector is up and running, the next thing that will happen, as I pointed out earlier, and let me switch to our previous month because we've not ingested data yet for this month, is you will get this on-premise tab. And the beauty here, like the other tabs, is when we click on the tab, we get a summary view of our on-prem infrastructure cost. We've got a historical view. In this case, we've got a 30-day view of the cost, as well as how many resources we're using on-premise. We can also slice and dice this data, if you will. We can view it by accounts that are coming in. We can view it by services. In this case, we've got some different types of virtual machines. and we can also explore the bill if you'd like to get into more details. So that's a quick view of pulling in on-premise data into our Cloud Cost dashboard so that we can get a full view of all of our spend across our hybrid environments. Now, the other unique thing about this is we can also define resource pools. Now, resource pools are a mechanism to align our infrastructure and cloud resources with business services. And so I've defined a hybrid resource pool here, and you can see I've got some 934 resources pulling in both on-prem and AWS data. So you might be asking, well, why would I do that? Well, you might have a service that spans on-prem and AWS resources in this case. And when we define these resource pools, we can do it by accounts. And as you can see here, I've selected 2 accounts. We can pull in tags, whether they be tags within a cloud provider or tags from on-prem resources or even certain services. So once we have a resource pool defined, I switch back to the dashboard. Now we can view the costs associated with those particular resources that align to something that's important to our business, either, in this case, either through AWS or on-premise. I can see these resources because the pool spans both of these. So I'll just pick on-premise, and if I go to resource pools, there's my hybrid resource pool. I can see my resources and also align this to my budgets for these resources aligned to these services. Let me pause there. Shyamal, would you like to add anything at this point?
No, I think the key is that the on-prem connector brings in the information across all of the service providers, all of the environments that are on-prem that are available for capacity optimization today. And we have a lot of existing customers, as well as capacity optimization out of box has over 50 connectors, and we gradually will be bringing in all of the other connectors as well. So the on-prem costing, you will modify that. How does the on-prem costing actually do? Because that's a general question I've been always asked is how does the on-prem costing can be configured, and that is you can configure that on the capacity optimization product itself. We're going to bring in some of those functionalities in the future as well with this product. Okay, Rick.
Okay, thanks, Shyamal. Yeah, so we're looking at some details of this pool. Again, just like the other types of views or other types of providers, we get a summary view. We can see what we're currently spending versus what the budget is. We get our historical view here. And also, what's interesting is the solution will also project out what the expected costs will be. So you get an idea of what the costs in the future will be, in this case, 3 months out.
Hey, Rick.
So that's, yes.
Rick, we've got a question from Javier. He wants to know where the on-premise costs are defined.
Yeah, so on-prem cost is defined on the on-prem side at the moment, and we will allow that to be brought into the Cloud Cost product in the future. So today it is defined on the same place that it used to be defined on the on-prem side, which is the Cloud Cost part of the module. The same worksheet.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Seth?
No.
Okay, great. So let's move on. So in the theme of resource pools, there is another mechanism that we can define resource pools. And we've got, instead of doing that manually, as in how this hybrid resource pool is defined here, there's 2 pools here. Note these are StockTrader and WordPress that are marked as business services, and they've been imported. So what this does is we've got a connector, as I mentioned before, in this case a connector to our discovery tool, discovery solution, and we can actually import services that are defined in the discovery solution automatically through the discovery connector, and that's what these services are here. So these 2 are AWS services, but let's just take a quick look at our StockTrader resource pool so you get a feel for that. So if I go back to the dashboard And because this is an AWS resource pool, to narrow down my list of pools, I could click on the AWS tab here or just go right to the pools. I've got my stock trader pool, resource pool here. You can also get an indication that it's a business service, it's imported, how many resources, what the costs are, and what the projected costs are. But if I click on this pool and get a visual of that data, two things I want to point out here that are a little bit different. Because this is an AWS specific pool, and this could also happen for Azure as well, we get recommendations for this pool. So there might be areas for cost savings within this particular resource pool aligned to the stock trader business service. But what's really powerful, if we want to make decisions about these recommendations, for example, if we should terminate idle VMs or put VMs on a power schedule, for example, we can switch to our discovery view of the service to get a better idea of the impact those decisions might make. So now I've automatically cross-launched into BMC Helix Discovery, and I see the stock trader app, and I get a better idea of the impact that changing a VM or changing the service might have before I actually act on those recommendations. Pausing there, Shyamal, anything to add on that point?
Yeah, so for the connector, we do connect directly to the Discovery's on-prem solution as well, which has a larger footprint. We are both connected. As you can see, that it was a cross-launch without logging in. It does save the session information, but it's on the same SSO, which kind of allows us to see the power of the Helix platform that was a new push from BMC in general in the last 6 months, which is one of the reasons why all of these products are coming together overall. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, so moving on to the next feature that Shyamal mentioned, he talked about the margins feature for service providers or even internal customers. So let's show you quickly how that's done. So again, from our toolbox in the upper right, we can switch to configurations. And within the configurations settings, we've got the discount settings here. And you can see we've already got some discounts defined for different an organization as well as different teams within the organization. But to illustrate this, let's define a new one. So let's say I want to add a margin here, and I'm going to select an organization. I'm just going to pick the top level org, but this could be any org or tenant within the organization. The provider we want to set the discount or margin for, in this case, we'll just pick AWS, but again, it could be any of these here. Services, you can pick one or more services. We'll pick all of these AWS services. And then at the bottom, we want to define the discount we're receiving from the provider as well as the discount offered. So I'm going to just plug in some numbers, and then I'm going to let Shyamal do a better job explaining how this would work.
Yep. So I think the key over here is that we're hearing from a lot of customers that they want to be able to, especially there is one very classic customer, which is service providers, right? So service providers want to be able to get good discounts on behalf of our team of their tenants. And in this case, it fits in perfectly because the entire feature was guided by a couple of our big service providers that are our customers on the product. And what they do is to get a 20% discount for, let's say, RDS. And they want to be able to offer, first of all, both of the discounts received as well as discount offered are from the public prices, okay, public catalog prices. So let's imagine the RDS is $100 in this case. The discount received for a service provider would be 20%, and hence it would be costing them $80 on the $100, and they want to be able to offer $90 to the tenant, so the tenant gets a better deal, but they all even the service provider gets a 10% in the middle, right? So that's the kind of that's what you will do in this case. It can also be applied directly for just internal customers where you want to be able to increase even or provide a specific discount from a service that you're getting from AWS, Azure, or Google Compute, and be able to show different price points to their end users. Now, when the tenant actually logs in, they see a different bill entirely, primarily because they will only see that bill that is been discounted by 10% and not the actual bill that the service provider or the in central IT team is getting. This allows people to manipulate the data a little bit so that they can create some sort of a operating margin or a budget in the middle while providing services for some of these things, and actually do apples to apples comparison of the on-prem costing as well as the cloud costing, because cloud typically does not include a lot of one-offs, and you can potentially get more discounts depending on how big of a pool you get for negotiation. Okay. Hopefully I.
Anything else, Shyamal?
No, that's all.
Great. So just to sum that up, so in this case, if we're getting, say, particular service is costing $100, we're getting a 20% discount, it's costing us $80, and then we're offering the tenant or the internal org 10%, so it would be costing them $90 as an example. And then when we click add, that margin will, or that discount setting will show up here in the list, and then the prices will be reflected accordingly to that tenant in their dashboard. Okay, so moving on in the last few minutes, a couple other features that we want to show. First off, under Azure, the Azure provider, we have a new feature where we are now having recommendations for Azure. In this case, we are able to recommend VMs that could be terminated because they've been idle for a certain period of time, or also right-sizing VMs that maybe have been provisioned in an over-allocated state. So we've got these two recommendations here. And before I move to the next one, Shyamal, any other input on that?
No, I think you did a pretty good job. Thank you.
Okay, so that's Azure recommendations. This is a new feature with 2002. And then finally, the last feature we want to talk about is AWS. Now, this feature has been around a little bit, but AWS Power Schedules is another recommendation that we've added recently for putting VMs on a power schedule that Shyamal mentioned. We can, for example, shut VMs off on a weekend and turn them on Monday morning. And so for any of these recommendations, whether they're Azure or AWS, we simply click on the recommendation, and then we get the full list of recommendations for that provider. In this case, we're interested in power schedules. We can select one or more of the VMs to put on a power schedule. We can get details about why the recommendation is happening here. We're getting a particular, in this case, we're getting a particular usage pattern that would suggest a power schedule would be better. And this is the power schedule that's recommended here in the middle. Now we can either act on that or ignore the recommendation. So we can select the recommendation and act on it or ignore it. I believe that's it. Anything else to add or any other questions, Seth? In the queue?
We have another question from Javier. Are we now recommending reserved instances as well? So will the recommendations include that, moving to a reserved instance?
Yes, so reserved instances right there. For Azure, it's coming, but AWS already is in the product, so which is right in the center where we're highlighting. Yep.
So the answer is yes on that. And again, we can click on the details and get recommendations for what should be purchased.
Okay.
Okay. Excuse me. That's all the written questions we have. Let me just see if yeah, we don't have too many other folks on the bridge. So,
so just a quick recap then, Seth, since we have a couple of minutes. So
sure.
What we pointed out was the TrueSite capacity optimization connector, which is configured under the connector setting here, and that connector pulls in, just like other connectors, on-premise cost data in this case, so that we can see in a single view our total costs across all of our cloud providers in a hybrid cloud fashion. We talked about being able to define resource pools that also include these on-premise resources, hybrid cloud resource pools that align with certain business services or constructs, whatever makes sense. We can set budgets in those pools and then get a visual of what those pools, how those pools are behaving in terms of the budget that they're aligned to. We can also import resource pools automatically through BMC Helix Discovery and the Discovery connector. That's another connector that we have for importing resource pools. That will also allow us to help make better business decisions when we can see the impact of possibly changing VMs or might have on other connected services. We just talked about margins and being able to set discounts and margins for large enterprises that might have different orgs or service providers. And then lastly, optimization recommendations for Azure. We can do idle VMs, resizing VMs, and then for AWS, putting them on power schedules. So that's just a quick recap of what we covered. So I hope that was useful.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Rick.
Yep.
All right. Well, we've hit the bottom of the hour, and since we don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Thanks, everybody, for attending, and keep an eye on your inbox. Should be getting an email with a link to the communities page where I'll post the recording in a day or two. And with that, thank you, Shyamal. Thank you, Rick. And thanks, everybody, for attending, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.